Hey there, my name is James Late. Welcome back to my channel 5149, where I discuss political and business topics, specifically how these topics relate to humanity and the overall well-being of our society. Today, I want to break down the public health failure and the legislative failure that has allowed the coronavirus pandemic to absolutely decimate our country. Over 300,000 people have died in the United States, with experts projecting more than 500,000 will be dead by early next year. I'm just going to go ahead and say it bluntly. Things are this bad because our elected representatives, Trump, Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, all of them, they don't actually care that much about coronavirus. They will literally trade dead people for their own personal or political gain. I'm being 100% dead serious, and I'll explain why. So there are two critical facets to responding to a global pandemic like this. The first is the public health response. What measures are we going to take to contain the transmission of the virus? The second is the legislative response. What infrastructure are we going to put in place to help people get through this pandemic? Trump, being the president, is most responsible for leading the public health response, except the only problem is that he doesn't actually care about public health. He cares about his own health and the health of the stock market, but definitely not public health. With Trump, it's not all incompetence. There is a rhyme and reason sometimes to what he says and does. For example, not investing properly in testing so that he can artificially deflate the case count is a conscious choice to try to not set off any alarm bells on the economy. It's also not by accident that he decided to politicize masks. He knew that it would rile up and ignite his base. I mean, the US government just doesn't have a great track record on privacy, and framing the mask issue as an invasion of personal privacy was very, very effective, because neoliberal and neoconservative policies over the past 3 decades have basically stripped away all dignity from everyday Americans, and Trump basically just piled on and was like, oh, masks are a big scam, it's the government trying to take over your body. So not only was he able to position himself against Democrats and against the establishment, he also comes across as some sort of savior, a contrarian truth teller who is out to defend your rights. But unfortunately, as it turns out, masks are pretty important, and his decision to politicize it has killed a lot of people and will kill a lot more people. My point here is that Trump's entire public health response, if you can call it that, is entirely predicated on what he thinks would benefit him personally. This same selfishness also applied to our elected representatives when it came to the legislative response to the pandemic. Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, do you think they actually care about protecting us from coronavirus? No way. Like I mentioned earlier, a proper legislative response to a public health crisis would be to put in place infrastructure that will protect citizens against the virus. For example, enacting policies like a paycheck protection program to make sure companies could shut down operations to slow the spread of the virus without impacting people's ability to meet their basic needs like food and shelter. Or putting in place policies like paid sick leave, or things like government-sponsored quarantine hotels, like they did so in countries like South Korea and Hong Kong, so people who were infected or may have been infected could have the option to quarantine safely without financial strain or endangering their family members. The truth is, they did almost nothing other than give trillions to corporations because the virus doesn't really affect them that much. They basically use coronavirus relief as a conduit for their political agenda. Pelosi, she wanted to help Biden win, so she made a cold calculation not to pass any further relief bills prior to the election. And right now, McConnell wants to make sure his corporate donors are taken care of, so he doesn't want to agree to any deal without a corporate liability shield so companies can't be sued if their workers contract COVID-19. They're so far removed from public service, it's incredible. Coronavirus is just another opportunity for our lawmakers to flex their power, or for Nancy Pelosi to accessorize her outfit or show off her bougie ice cream fridge, and for McConnell to take a nice long holiday. And let's keep it 100% real. I mean, why should they care? They have access to the best healthcare in the world. So even if they do catch the virus, they can get their hands on all kinds of life-saving drugs like experimental antibody cocktails and around-the-clock care that the general public just doesn't have access to. And the point I want to end on is this. I think it's important for people to know that, as with most issues in this country, things are the way they are because of a choice that our corrupt politicians have made. And the coronavirus pandemic is no different. This combination of what I talked about, this public health failure and this legislative failure brought about by people like Trump, Pelosi, McConnell, 3,000 deaths a day, millions going hungry on the streets. It's not bad luck. It's not circumstance. It's not gridlock in Washington. It's all brought about by the fact that their priorities are different than ours, and they just can't be bothered that much to care. Oh, and one final point. I just want to say that regardless of your political ideology, where you live, your faith, even your opinion on whether or not this virus is real, we have to be on each other's side, because people like Pelosi, McConnell, Trump, they're never going to be on our side. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about our elected legislators and public servants and what we can do to break this ugly cycle of corruption. If you enjoyed my video, please like and subscribe, and also share. It really helps a small independent voice like mine. As always, I appreciate your time, and I'll see you next week.